Hi, I'm Bart Hanson. I'm the owner and operator of CrushLivePoker.com. The following hand comes from our call-in show that we record at 4:45 p.m. Pacific Time every Monday. If you want to call in your hand, check out the phone number in the description. Hello.
Hey, Bart.
Hey,
This is KL.
how's it going?
So like I was saying, we were playing at Matrix last weekend.
Okay.
This is a 2-3-5-10 game,
Okay.
and it is a stack max, so you can match the biggest stack at the table.
Big stack game, right?
Yep.
So you know you know Conlon then, I'm sure.
Yeah, I do know how.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So onto the hand. So the low jack limps, and this is a pretty loose player. He's been fairly splashy, but he's very straightforward post flop.
Okay.
But he probably is going to peel pretty wide, and on the flop play very straightforward.
Okay.
The hijack limps as well. Loose player, kind of shot, maybe only 600. I'm not worried about their ranges at all. The CO limps. The CO is a good player. I would say a good thinking, winning player.
Okay.
And the small blind limps as well. And then I'm in the big blind, the $5 with the king queen of spades.
Okay.
And I raised to $85. And
Okay.
I'm about 1750 effective with the cutoff and the small blind.
Okay.
So the low jack calls and the cutoff calls. Everyone else folds.
So the cutoff has you covered and the low jack is short, right? Is that right?
The low jack has about 1200 and the cutoff has me covered.
Oh, okay, 1200. Okay. All right. So you make it 85 over some limps. You go call with king queen of spades, right? From the small blind. Okay. Let's go to the flop.
So the flop comes down ace 9-7 with the ace of spades, 9 of hearts, and 7 of diamonds.
Ace of spades, 9 of hearts, 7 of diamonds.
Yep.
So you can structure
King,
here.
queen of spades.
Right. You got king queen of spades, so you could structure here a bluff where you continue on with spades. It's interesting the nature of this hand. Like a lot of these guys really shouldn't. This might even be a spot where I might even make like a zero equity c-bet. Like if I had king queen without the flush, the backdoor, like you might bet because these guys shouldn't have aces here really all that much, you know? I mean, I try to structure I try to structure my c-bets correctly, but it's kind of an interesting spot. So I would definitely c-bet here for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely think the low jack's going to fold anything besides an ace, pretty much, unless he has two pair.
Yeah.
And the cutoff, I don't think is going to be as easy to get through. I think he is going to call down a lot.
Yeah.
So I c-bet 150, and the low jack folds and the cutoff calls.
So you c-bet 150 into a pot of
like
what,
280.
like 250, like 280? Okay.
Yeah,
and
280.
the low jack calls or the cutoff calls?
No, the low jack folds and the cutoff calls.
Okay, so LG folds, cutoff, who you said is the good player, calls.
Yeah, and I don't think he's going to be limping 9s behind or 7s behind,
Yeah.
or even a strong ace. So I think his range should be fairly weak unless he has 7-9 or he flop aces up.
Or he could have like ace deuce suited or something like that.
Yeah.
That might be an overlimp. Right.
Yeah, something
right.
like that. Yeah.
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 Well, I mean, it's interesting.
So the turn is
It's
the 5 of, yeah.
You said it was 5 of spades. Yeah. What I was just going to say is this. You know, this obviously looks like a good 3-barrel hand if you do pick up equity. It's interesting that you say that the cutoff is good because you look at this a number of different ways. Like a really good player, and I feel like sometimes this information is sort of misunderstood. The cutoff should then realize if he was really good that he has to defend a lot, right? Because you have such a range advantage that he supposedly might have to.
And I think
what's one of the best hands he can have here without raising preflop? If you think he's raising like ace 5 plus, if he was going to try to like play MDF towards the river, he would have to call with a lot of hands. People don't really do that. You've got to, you have the green light to barrel off here. You said the turn now is the 5 of spades. Is that right?
Yeah, and I think this is a great card to continue on. And it's exactly like you said. I think he's going to defend the flop pretty wide with pretty much any ace, maybe even a 9, maybe a 7.
Yeah.
And I think the turn is going to be like a decision spot for him very often.
Okay.
So the turn comes to 5 of spades. I continue for 425.
425 into a pot of four? Let's see here. It's
about 580.
So you make 425. That's interesting because usually like that sizing I don't really see that sizing in a lot of the top section stuff. You bet like 2/3. A lot of that stuff through that Conlon will run through those, what he thinks in those solvers would say, like it's either going to be an over bet here or a smaller bet. The 5 interacts with his range better than it interacts with your range, obviously. We'd have to think
Yeah,
about
so
the
I
way
was
that he would, what hands he would limp in with. Obviously, like 8-6 comes in. I don't know. Like I
so
said, I'm just
I
saying
was
that I don't usually see that size that much.
I do tend to agree with you. So I was trying to figure out how to size it because the stack depth was kind of an issue because I was trying to see
Right.
what I could bet on the turn to be able to generate enough fold equity on the river if I needed to bluff again.
Right. Because if you bet too large, then you have to give up, right?
Yeah, so typically in this spot I would normally bet pot or slight over bet and then be able to barrel off the river or just give up on the river if need be.
Mm-hmm.
But I was trying to leverage stack sizes so that I could make a big enough bet on the river. So I settled on 425 because if I felt I went too small, he might think that it's weak and raise, and I wasn't particularly happy to like bet call off here.
So you're gonna have about 1,000 left, and the pot's gonna be like what 1,500 something like that, right? If he calls.
Yeah, something like 1400.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have 1100 left, and it's gonna be like 1450.
So he calls here on the turn.
So he takes a long time. He times for a bit. I'm gonna say like 2.5 minutes, and then he calls.
Okay.
And I feel like you said, as a good player, he knows that I have a huge range advantage here, and he's gonna have to be defending pretty wide.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a live player thing where a lot of people don't really fire the river, so I think that he's going to
He might overfold the river.
overcalling the turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then overfold the river.
Yeah.
So which was my thinking. And then on the river, it was another 9, which I think is a pretty good cut because it cuts down his 2 pair combos.
Mm-hmm.
And now if I have ace king, I'm going to go for 3 streets for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you had ace king or ace queen, you'd go for 3 streets, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think that if he does have an ace, it's going to be like ace jack or lower, so it's going to have a really hard time calling the river.
I mean, I think he raises with those hands pre. You might
I would think so as well.
You might run into like an 8-9 suit, like an 8-9 overlimp or a 9-10 overlimp that wasn't raised, which continues on turn because it would pick up, well, like 8-9 would pick up a gutter, right, to a 6. So you might run into some 9s, but I can see this. So the river's a 9, and then what do you do? Do you shove?
Yeah, so I shove for 1100, 1090, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he tanked for a long time. He was in the tank for like 5 minutes, and then he finally called.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Yeah. I'm gonna bring our token bluffer here, who's on the phone as well. Squish my tomato. Did you hear this call?
Sorry, I was. Can you recap it real quick?
So, low jack limps cut off. This is at the matrix. It's a 5-10. We have open limp from the low jack, cutoff limp, small blind limps. Hero makes it 85, 1750 effective out of the big blind with king of spades, queen of spades. The low jack with a $1,200 stack calls, and the cutoff, who is said to be a good player, who had just over a limp preflop, he calls. And there are 3 ways. King, queen of spades. The hero has king, queen of spades. The board comes out, ace of spades, 9 of hearts, 7 of diamonds. Hero bets 150 into 280. The low jack folds, the weak player, but the cutoff calls. The turn is the 5 of spades. So it's ace of spades, 9 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, 5 of spades. Hero has king, queen of spades. Hero bets 425 with the nut flush draw. Cutoff calls. Pot now is 1,400. Hero's got about 1,100 left. River's a 9. Ace of spades, 9 of hearts, 7 of diamonds, 5 of spades. River's a 9. And now Hero shoves all in. What do you think?
I like it. I think he's going to have a lot of weak ace-x. I don't see him having much 9x after calling the flop and then calling the turn. I like it.
Right. Well, I knew you were going to say you liked it for sure. All right, caller. So what ended up happening? He called you?
Yeah, he called me and he showed ace-queen off, which I was really
surprised. He overlimped ace-queen off. Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was pretty surprised by it, and I might have to adjust some assumptions about the player based on what happened.
Now, what's interesting here is that he has a slam dunk call, right, in terms of MD. I mean, these are spots where You don't see usually somebody over limp, but you'll get into these spots out of the blinds when it goes like raise call and then you 3-bet. The initial guy folds and now the initial caller like calls when he would 3-bet a lot of his hands off. Those spots you've got a huge range advantage here. It's the same thing here too. But if we looked at it from a fundamental point of view, if we somehow overlimped ace queen or ace jack, he's supposed to call. You know what I mean? Like he's supposed to call to avoid being bluffed off the hand. But that is interesting. Yeah, I don't mind the play. I would say, and Mark Squish, the caller bets 425 into 580. That's a little bit. I don't see that sizing all that much, but the stacks were odd.
Yeah, I think the flop sizing kind of started off a little weird, especially on such a dry flop and multi-way. I think if you go smaller on the flop, then you can still go polar on the turn and have a pot size bet left for the river.
So bet like 80 or 90 instead on the flop, like a 25% pot size, and then you could follow up with a pot size bet on turn, and you wouldn't be so awkward. You see what I'm saying? And you could still shut the river. Yeah. So
the only question I have is very often, especially at places like Matrix, smaller sizes just induces a lot of raises.
Sure.
From weaker players because they just don't understand it.
But I think in this particular spot, though,
yeah,
I think on this specific hand with these limpers and an ace-high board, I don't think you're gonna get played at. I don't see people play at people without an ace here all that much, unless you're saying that you don't want to get raised by an ace because you want the ability to run this 3-street. But I understand what you're saying. That is true.
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Hey guys, if you like what you've seen here, please click on the subscribe button and you'll get notified every time we put up a new video. And if you want to check out crushlivepoker.com for the first month free, use the code YTA200. Click on the link right there.